Admiral Kale Vera leaned back in his command throne, the wide panes of the Dominion's hand displaying a planet burning below. Fires curled like orange veins across the surface, small cities crumbling under the Empire's precision bombardment. He did not watch with awe. He had long since outgrown awe. Instead, he sipped a bitter tonic and allowed the sound of his officers' reports to drift past his ears. Another conquest, another tedious show of dominance. Governor's palace secured, one officer announced, his voice carrying the smug rhythm of inevitability. Resistance negligible. The tribute convoys will be rerouted within the cycle. Kale did not bother to look at him. The officer expected neither praise nor acknowledgement, because this was not a victory, it was maintenance. The Empire, vast and unquestioned, kept its machine oiled with a steady rhythm of conquest, subjugation, and taxation. Tribute was its lifeblood. And when one world wavered, when some provincial governor muttered about independence, Kale's fleet reminded them that freedom was a myth. He had once found pleasure in the role. In his youth, he admired the artistry of fleet maneuvers, the theater of overwhelming firepower. But age and countless campaigns had dulled it to routine. There was no real challenge anymore, no opponent with teeth. That was why the request crossing his desk now was almost amusing. "Admiral," said Commander Ian, his adjutant, bowing with stiff formality. "Our collectors report that one of the human worlds has failed to deliver their scheduled tribute. This is the third infraction in as many cycles." Kale's lips curved in a faint smile. The humans. Again. A ripple of laughter moved across the bridge. The humans were not feared, not even respected. They were a curiosity, a people whose homeworld sat on the edge of mapped space, a blue marble teeming with water and noise. Their colonies were little more than resource outposts. The Empire had expected compliance, and compliance had been given, grudgingly, perhaps, but consistently. Until now. "They send excuses," Rien continued, a sneer in his tone. "Something about reallocation, internal instability. They think bureaucracy will shield them." Kale tapped his glass against the armrest, producing a slow, deliberate sound that silenced the bridge. "Then we shall remind them bureaucracy ends where power begins. Ready a strike fleet. I will attend this matter personally. It has been too long since I felt amusement." His officers grinned like wolves. There would be no risk, no danger. Only another backwater species, learning its place. The journey to Sol took 3 days. In those days, Kale occupied himself reviewing human records. The archives were thin, their achievements trivial. They had ships, yes, but crude, reactive drives, armor plating, weapons that belonged in museums. Their culture was noisy and fractured, dominated by trivial entertainment and squabbles between nations. He almost pitied them. Almost. When the fleet emerged at the edge of the system, the bridge filled with light as the screens lit Sol's planets in sequence. The Admiral listened to his officers report planetary alignments, energy signatures, gravitational markers. Routine, predictable. Earth, Rien said with mock reverence. Their homeworld. Primitive, but charming. Kale studied the world on the screen. Oceans swirling across continents, clouds painting shadows over green and gray terrain. For a moment he thought of his own homeworld before it had been consumed by the Empire's machinery. He quickly dismissed the thought. Sentiment was for the conquered. Deploy reconnaissance ships. "I want orbital positions secured before the humans realize we've arrived," Kale ordered. It was almost too easy. Human orbital stations fell silent as Imperial boarding parties stormed their halls. Automated defense satellites were disabled with contemptuous efficiency. Cities on the surface dimmed, their power grids collapsing as jamming fields rolled across the planet. "Admiral, they are not resisting," Rien reported, puzzled. "No mobilization. No fleet response." Kale raised a brow. "No. Perhaps they have learned obedience faster than most." The laughter that followed was uneasy. Even his seasoned officers expected a token defense, a futile gesture of resistance. Instead, Earth seemed to cower. It was then the broadcast arrived. Every Imperial ship, every console, every comm screen flickered to life. A face appeared, not a king, not a general, not a pleading diplomat. A woman middle-aged, dressed in plain attire. Her voice was calm, her eyes steady. "This is Earth. You have one chance. Leave." The bridge froze. Some laughed outright, the sound harsh against the sudden silence. Others exchanged uncertain glances. It was not a plea, not a threat shouted in desperation. It was simply stated, as though it were fact. Kale leaned forward, studying the woman's face. She did not blink. She did not waver. It was unsettling, though he could not yet say why. "Mute the transmission," he said. "Fire on their primary power hub. Let them understand consequence." The fleet obeyed. Beams of incandescent light lanced from orbit, striking a massive facility near one of the planet's largest cities. The explosion blossomed bright enough to be seen from orbit, a flower of fire curling into the sky. Cheers broke across the bridge. But Kale frowned. Reports returned from the site almost instantly. No civilians. No military. No infrastructure of value. The facility was empty, stripped, hollowed out long ago. A decoy. He did not reveal his unease. They abandoned it. Typical cowardice. Proceed with full bombardment. Yet as he gave the order, sensors flickered. Strange distortions whispered across their instruments, brief wormhole anomalies, phantom energy signatures darting through the asteroid belt. His officers dismissed them as static, the noise of primitive systems colliding with advanced machinery. Kale remained silent, watching the blue planet below, its lights dimmed but its voice calm. For the first time in years, he felt a faint stirring he had nearly forgotten. Not fear, not yet, but something close. The woman's words replayed in his mind. "You have one chance. Leave." The Dominion's hand fired again, but Kale's gaze lingered on the shadows in the belt, the distortions in the void. Something about this world did not add up. He had wanted amusement. Instead, he found himself listening to the quiet thrum of unease in his chest, wondering whether the Empire had misjudged more than a tribute schedule. And though he would never admit it aloud, part of him wanted to hear Earth speak again. Kale's fleet hung above Earth like a crown of iron, its warships glinting against the planet's curve. From his command throne, he surveyed the readouts scrolling across the bridge consoles. The human power grids remained dark. Their fleets, if they possessed any, were nowhere to be seen. And still, the words from that single broadcast clung to him like ash. "You have one chance. Leave." His officers were less restrained. "Admiral, permission to expand bombardment," Rien pressed. "We cripple their cities, their morale breaks. By tomorrow they will beg us to finish them." Kale's gaze lingered on the tactical display, a hollow outline of the Earth surrounded by blinking Imperial icons. Every instinct told him this should be finished already. That one strike would be enough to scatter a primitive species. Yet the emptiness disturbed him. Where were their leaders? Where were their defenses? Even Prey fought harder than this. "Proceed," Kale said, his voice flat. "Target their orbital stations first. I want them blind." As commands rippled outward, Earth's satellites blinked out, one after another. The Empire's weapons tore through them like glass. Reports of progress flowed in steady rhythm. Too steady, Kale thought. The planet remained eerily silent. Then the silence broke. One by one, Imperial ships experienced sudden power fluctuations. Not crippling, but sharp enough to trigger alarms and force engineers into frantic recalibration. It spread like a ripple, from frigates on the rim to destroyers in close orbit. "Localized surges," Rien reported, his voice tightening. "Our diagnostics suggest external interference." Kale narrowed his eyes. "From where?" "No source identified." Before Kale could respond, the main view screen split into multiple panes. Images of human warships appeared, dozens of them, uncloaking around the asteroid belt. They were not crude hulls of iron and fuel, as the record suggested. These were sleek, angular vessels, armored in composites the scanners struggled to penetrate. Gasps spread across the bridge. The ships moved with precision, forming disciplined patterns that spoke of long training, not improvisation. Their hulls bore no marks of age. They were newly forged, waiting for this very moment. Kale rose from his throne, his fingers tightening around its edge. Impossible. Their records show no fleet of this size. Where did these ships come from? "They were hiding them," Rien whispered. "All this time." The first volley came without warning. Human ships fired beams of concentrated plasma, not at vital Imperial systems, but at precise, deliberate points, targeting propulsion, jamming communications, severing engines from power cores. Within minutes, 3 Imperial cruisers were disabled, drifting helplessly in orbit. "Admiral, they're crippling us, not destroying us," another officer stammered. "It's deliberate." Kale's jaw clenched. He recognized strategy when he saw it. These humans weren't defending in desperation. They were executing a plan they had rehearsed. Every move was controlled, measured, confident. A voice returned to the comms, this time male, calm and low. "We told you once. Leave now. We don't want this war. But we will finish it." The bridge froze. None dared laugh this time. The tone was wrong. There was no bluster, no arrogance. Only certainty. Kale forced his voice to remain steady. "All batteries return fire. Show them what it means to provoke the Empire." The void lit with Imperial firepower, beams and missiles cascading toward the human formation. And yet, as they struck, the ships flickered and vanished. Holograms. Decoys. The true fleet reappeared in their wake, flanking Imperial cruisers already turning to fire at phantoms. Kale's mind raced. Decoys, stealth technology, weaponry that slipped past their shields. None of it should be possible. The Empire had scouted these people for decades, cataloging their colonies, dissecting their technology. They had seen nothing like this, which meant one conclusion: humanity had been hiding. The realization settled like ice in his chest. They had not been late with tribute. They had been buying time. Across the bridge, panic crackled at the edges of discipline. Officers shouted overlapping reports, jam comms, drone incursions, AI infiltration on internal networks. Even the Dominion's hands shuddered as systems flickered, lights dimming for a heartbeat before stabilizing. "Admiral, they're inside our fire control systems," one engineer cried out. "I don't know how." Kale did not reply. His eyes were fixed on the central screen, where human ships moved with unnerving calm. They did not chase retreating cruisers. They did not strike disabled vessels. They simply dismantled the fleet piece by piece, like hunters guiding prey into traps. On the edge of the display, a larger anomaly appeared, something massive emerging from a wormhole beyond Mars. The data returned garbled, too advanced for their sensors to parse cleanly. All Kale knew was scale. A vessel larger than any human construction should exist, accompanied by swarms of drones moving in synchronized lattices. "New contact detected," Rien reported, his voice cracking. I don't understand how they built that. Nothing in their industrial capacity suggests." "Quiet," Kale snapped. For the first time, he felt it. Not unease, not irritation, fear. The humans had prepared this. Every colony that had begged mercy from the Empire had been bait. Every delay in tribute was a feint. Every weakness a mask. And now the mask was gone. "Admiral," the calm male voice returned, steady as a knife. "This is not your war to win. Take your fleet and go. This is your final chance." The bridge fell silent, the hum of consoles and the faint tremor of engines the only sound. Officers looked to Kale for orders, their bravado stripped away. He felt their fear pressing against him like gravity, begging for him to be the unshakable center. Kale inhaled slowly, forcing composure. He would not let them see his doubts. "Form defensive lines. Concentrate fire. We will not retreat from primitives." Even as he said it, he knew the words were hollow. Humanity was not primitive. Humanity was something else entirely, something the Empire had never faced. The void blazed with renewed fire, Imperial weapons saturating the human formation. For every ship destroyed, 2 more emerged from cloaked positions. For every drone swarm scattered, another rose from wormholes seeded across the system. Kale's command board lit with red. One by one, his ships fell silent, not destroyed, but disabled, their crews trapped in darkened hulls awaiting capture. He stared at the battlefield, mind racing with a single thought he dared not voice. They were not the hunters here. They were the ones caught in a trap meticulously designed to spring only once arrogance had carried them too far. On the screen, Earth turned slowly below, its surface calm, its cities dark. The voice lingered in his memory, the words etched like scars. One chance. Leave. But it was too late. Kale sat alone in his private chamber, the steady hum of the Dominion's hands remaining systems echoing in the silence. His fleet had been mauled, not annihilated, yet the difference was academic. Disabled ships drifting in Earth's orbit were no less defeated than wreckage. He had ordered survivors withdrawn, regrouped what vessels still obeyed command, but the truth clung to him like a shadow. The Empire had faced something it had not anticipated, and worse, it had underestimated them. He summoned the intelligence core. Holographic panes of light bloomed around him, pulling fragments of intercepted human data. Their archives were fractured, filled with noise and contradictory reports, but what emerged struck him harder than any weapon. The first images showed vast armies marching through mud, endless trenches littered with bodies, artillery thunder rolling across barren fields. The humans called it a world war, but to Kale it looked like mass madness. They killed each other with a dedication bordering on ritual, spilling blood for inches of land. He shifted the stream. Cities incinerated in bursts of fire brighter than suns, mushroom clouds rising like deities of destruction. He watched the aftermath, shadows burned into walls, survivors staggering through ruin. His chest tightened, not in pity, but in recognition. These were not the acts of prey. This was a species that had stared into its own abyss and stepped forward anyway. The next sequence showed mechanized warfare, skies filled with screaming aircraft, oceans with iron leviathans. Later still, orbital launches, machines crawling across dead moons, soldiers training with weapons designed for wars that never even came. Every century brought new tools of annihilation, and still humanity endured. They fought themselves with a brutality Kale's own kind reserved only for enemies sworn across generations. One particular recording froze him in place. Grainy footage, a speech delivered by a human leader with iron in his voice. "We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight in the fields, we shall never surrender." The words, though ancient, carried a resonance that made Kale's throat tighten. It was not pride that stirred him, but unease. This was not rhetoric, it was a promise. He ended the stream with a sharp gesture, the chamber returning to shadow. He sat still for a long time, staring at nothing. He had thought them primitives. He had believed their fractured politics, their late tributes, their chaotic cultures were weakness. But weakness did not explain what he had seen. Weakness did not survive such self-inflicted torment. No, humanity had been forged in fire, sharpened on its own cruelty. The Empire's arrogance was not new to him. He had worn it like armor for years, had cultivated it in his officers, had wielded it to terrify governors into submission. But now he saw the flaw. Arrogance was blindness, and blindness was death. He wondered how many of his peers would recognize this before it was too late. The summons came before he could dwell further. The Imperial Council demanded his report. Reluctantly, he obeyed, the chamber dissolving into the grand holographic amphitheater where his superiors awaited. Rows of rulers appeared, their forms tall and regal, adorned with the jeweled sigils of dominion. Their faces reflected impatience more than fear. To them, Earth was a minor theater, a distraction from the grand machinery of the Empire. "Admiral Vera," intoned Hystrategos Malvek, voice booming across the chamber. "Explain why your fleet has stalled before a world of primitives. Have you grown complacent?" Kale resisted the urge to bare his teeth. Primitives? That word is inaccurate. Humanity is no untrained race. They have concealed technology far beyond our estimates. They employ tactics that rival our academies. This was not accident, it was deliberate deception. Murmurs rippled through the council. Some smirked, others leaned forward with interest. Malvek sneered. "You were caught off guard by trickery. That is all." "No," Kale snapped, louder than intended. The chamber quieted. He forced his tone down. This was not trickery. This was preparation. They knew us. They studied us. Every colony we believed theirs was a decoy, designed to draw us in. This war was not stumbled into, it was chosen by them the moment we overstepped. Laughter echoed. One counselor, draped in violet robes, waved a dismissive hand. "Chosen? They are a fractured world barely united under their own sky. You see shadows where there are none, Admiral." Kale felt the old heat rise in his chest, the instinct to match their arrogance with his own. Instead, he restrained himself. They fight differently. They do not measure victory in battles won, but in wars ended. Study their history, as I have. When they rise, they do not stop until their enemies are ashes. If we continue to provoke them, we invite a war that will not end on Earth's soil. It will end on ours. Silence followed, heavier than the laughter before. The counselor shifted, some uneasy, most scornful. Malvek finally leaned forward, his voice sharp. "Then your failure is greater than I thought. You let them cripple your fleet, and now you cloak your shame with prophecy. Enough. Reinforcements will gather. A full invasion armada. Humanity will be broken within the month." Kale lowered his eyes, concealing the storm within. He knew he would not sway them. The Empire had built its throne on the assumption of superiority. To question that was to unravel everything. The session ended, the chamber dissolving back to his quiet quarters. Alone again, Kale exhaled, a sound closer to a growl. They would not listen. They could not. And when the hammer fell, they would learn the truth too late. He returned to the human archives, but now his interest was not tactical, it was personal. He wanted to understand them, not as enemy, but as species. He watched more recordings, saw faces twisted in defiance, soldiers clinging to weapons with bloodied hands, civilians rising against invaders with nothing but stones. He saw leaders speak of hope even as fire consumed their cities. For the first time in decades, Cale felt something he had thought dead in him, admiration. A dangerous sentiment, but impossible to deny. His adjutant entered quietly, breaking the reverie. Rien's face was pale, his voice subdued. The council has ordered us to regroup at staging grounds near Vega. They mean to assemble the largest invasion in a century. Cale did not answer at once. His gaze lingered on the frozen image of a human child, clutching a flag, as rubble burned behind him. There was terror in the child's eyes, yes, but also a spark Cale recognized. The spark of something that refused to break. Finally he spoke. Then the council has doomed us all. Rien hesitated. Do you truly believe they can stand against us? Cale turned, his eyes hard as stone. I no longer believe they will stand against us. I believe they will come for us. And when they do, nothing in this galaxy will remain the same. The chamber fell into silence once more, save for the quiet hum of the ship. Cale knew then that his path had shifted. Loyalty to the Empire remained his duty, but conviction no longer lay there. Conviction now belonged to a single truth etched into his bones: the humans were not prey. They were predators forced into hiding, waiting for the moment the universe gave them reason to bare their teeth. And that moment had arrived. The invasion fleet arrived in Sol like a tidal wave, hundreds of Imperial warships unfolding from a void in symmetrical ranks. Their sheer size dwarfed anything Cale had commanded before, a show of force meant to erase doubt not just in the humans, but in every watching subject of the Empire. To the Council, it was meant to be swift and decisive. To Cale, it looked like a funeral procession, the gleam of iron on its way to rust. He stood on the bridge of the Dominion's hand, silent as his officers rattled off reports. The Empire's greatest armada arrayed itself in perfect order, weapons primed, shields humming. His peers expected obedience. They would measure him by his efficiency in this final crushing strike. Yet he could not ignore the weight in his chest, the memory of human war footage, the eyes of the child in the rubble. Every image whispered that this would not end as the Council believed. Admiral, Rien said softly, leaning close. All ships report ready. Orders. Cale stared at the tactical display. Earth turned below, dark still, no frantic mobilization, no desperate transmission. Just silence, heavy and watchful. He swallowed once before giving the command. Commence advance. Standard formation. The void trembled as the Empire's Leviathans drifted closer to the blue planet. But before the first volley could be fired, space itself rippled. Wormholes blossomed like wounds in the dark, dozens of them, then hundreds, surrounding the fleet in an instant. From them poured humanity's answer. Ships surged forth, not massive, not ornate, but lethal in their precision. They did not come in wild disorder. They emerged as though choreographed, sliding into flanking positions, cutting through Imperial lines before the officers on Cale's bridge could even adjust. Drones spilled from hidden bays, swarms of silver teeth that dove into the Empire's ranks, tearing at hull plating, disrupting shields, embedding like parasites. Multiple breaches. Our rear lines are collapsing, someone shouted. Cale did not flinch. He watched as firestorms erupted across the display, Imperial cruisers spinning helplessly as their propulsion died, battleships engulfed in clouds of drones. Humanity was not fighting for spectacle. They fought with surgical brutality, dismantling the Empire's greatest fleet without hesitation. Then the broadcast came, steady and cold, a voice speaking across every channel. This is Earth. You were warned. Now you will learn. Cale's officers stiffened, some trembling, others frozen. He heard the disbelief in their silence. This was not how wars were fought in the Empire. Slow, grinding, bloody affairs that dragged across decades. This was something else, a demonstration of mastery. Return fire. Rien barked, desperation cracking his tone. The void lit up with Imperial counterstrikes. Yet even as the weapons fired, systems flickered, targeting arrays scrambled, missiles veered off course. Entire salvos vanished into decoy signals. It was as if the humans were inside their ships, pulling strings, cutting threads. Cale's fists clenched at his sides. They are not just fighting us, he said quietly. They're controlling the field. One by one, Imperial vessels fell silent, not destroyed but disabled, left drifting with no power. It was deliberate, calculated. Humanity was proving a point. They could end it in fire, but they chose not to. They chose precision, restraint, the kind of restraint that frightened Kale more than annihilation. On the display, the Dominion's hand shuddered as her shields faltered under the swarm. Kale gripped the arm of his throne and forced calm into his voice. Signal all ships still operational. Cease fire. Hold position. Rien turned to him, stunned. Admiral. Do it, Kale snapped, his eyes burning. Or we lose everything. The order rippled outward, though many captains disobeyed, continuing to fire until their ships were silenced in turn. Within an hour, the greatest fleet the Empire had ever assembled hung shattered in orbit, its remains glinting like debris in twilight. The silence afterward was worse than the battle. Then the humans spoke again, their voice clear, almost sorrowful. We never sought this war. But we will not be prey. Lay down your arms, and you may yet live. Kale's throat tightened. The words were not spoken in triumph, but in warning, a tone that carried weight heavier than any threat. He understood, perhaps more than his peers ever would. This was not humanity's first war. This was their nature, honed and sharpened, and now turned outward. A direct channel opened to his ship, and for the first time he saw the face behind the voice, a human commander, expression steady, eyes cold as carved stone. Admiral Vera, the man said, addressing him by name. You have a choice. You can continue to resist, and your people will vanish from history. Or you can serve as a bridge. Guide what remains of your empire into a future where it may still exist. Decide. The bridge crew turned toward him, every eye reflecting fear and desperation. Kale felt the weight of their expectation pressing against his spine. For years, he had been the embodiment of imperial certainty, the man who laughed at defiance and crushed rebellion without pause. Now that certainty was gone. What remained was choice. He bowed his head, not in defeat but in recognition. I accept. His voice was hoarse but steady. If survival is to be ours, I will serve as your bridge. The human commander inclined his head once. The transmission cut. The drones withdrew, leaving the Dominion's hand scarred but intact. Around them, the remnants of the fleet floated in silence. Kale sank back into his throne, his hands trembling where none could see. He thought of the council, their jeers and dismissal. He thought of the child in the rubble, of the speeches of defiance, of humanity's wars that never ended until silence itself was conquered. And he knew, with the clarity of iron, that the Empire was finished, not by destruction, but by revelation. Its myth of invincibility had shattered, and nothing could repair it. For a long moment, he closed his eyes and let the silence settle. Then, softly, he whispered to himself, we thought them prey. We were wrong. They were only waiting. Beyond the viewport, Earth turned slowly, calm and unbroken, while across the galaxy news of the Empire's defeat would soon ripple like storm. Tribute would cease. Worlds would rebel. Alliances would shift. And at the center of it all, humanity would stand, not triumphant, not celebrating, but watchful. Kale felt the chill of inevitability. The humans had not fought to win this battle. They had fought to end the war before it could spread. And now they would look outward, their gaze no longer turned to survival, but to dominance. In the silence of the bridge, he spoke words that no one else would hear, a final reflection carried only by the void. They weren't hiding from us. They were hiding for us, from what they can become. The words lingered like a gravestone as the blue planet gleamed below, serene and merciless, its warning etched across the stars.